Hello there, and welcome back to Cell Biology Lesson 4. This one is on differentiation and specialization. And as always, please remember to make sure that you have all the appropriate tools that you need in order to get through the lesson, which is having a pen or pencil, highlighter, green or red pen, ruler for underlining and highlighting as well. And just make sure that you're in a quiet place that you can actually hear everything and you're not going to be distracted from anything else, okay? All right, so moving on, if you want to just pause the video right now and make sure that you get through these 8 questions, answer to the best of your abilities, and we'll get through from there. All right, perfect. So, number 1 is going to be asking, identify the part of the microscope that the slide is placed on. So, most of these questions are going to be drawing on the previous couple lessons that we've done. So, make sure that you are aware of that as we go through these questions, okay? So, number 1 is going to be the stage. Number 2, identify what part of the microscope clears the image for view. So again, I think I mentioned this in the last video. I'm not particularly fond of the wording of this question, but basically it's asking what do you need to look through in order to see the image that you're looking at, and that's going to be your eyepiece. State the maximum magnification of the microscope. So this one, it doesn't really specify which one, but I'll just let you know that the light microscope can usually go up to about 1,000 times magnification, whereas electron microscopes, if that's what you put, or sorry, if that's what you were thinking, then the answer would be 10 million. Okay? Number 4, identify the equation for working out magnification. This one we learned from last lesson, and that's going to be magnification equals image size divided by actual size. So remember the triangle, all right, and use that to your advantage. Number 5, state 2 things that have to be included on a drawing. So it wasn't explicitly stated in the lesson, but we did talk about it at the end of last lesson, and that is you need to have your magnification, and probably the most important thing after that would be your title. But I also included in important annotations. So for instance, if you wanted to label certain parts of your diagram, that would probably be just as important as well. All right, number 6, state the function of the cell wall and what it's made from. I didn't put it in there because I just forgot, but the function of the cell wall is basically to protect it or to provide structure, support. Any of these words will work, and it's made from cellulose. Number 7, state the function of a ribosome. Okay, and the ribosome, as we know, is the site of protein synthesis. And number 8, identify what is found in the vacuole. That is cell sap. Just as a reminder, please make sure that you are reviewing the organelles and their functions, because those are most likely to be on an assessment for easy points, right? Those are just recall questions. So just to let you know, all right? All right, so please make sure that you have the correct annotations, or sorry, the correct answers. And if you do, then we'll move along. Okay, so by the end of today's lesson, hopefully you will need to you will be able to do most of these things, which is to explain the need for differentiation in a multicellular organism and how it differs in plants and animals, and explain how specialized cells are adapted to their functions. Okay, so you may not have heard lots of these words such as differentiation and specialization, but they're essentially the same thing. There's actually not much to explain there. And you'll see as we move along that this actually isn't as difficult as it sounds, okay? Right. So the first thing we're going to look at is differentiation, okay? So first we're going to talk about the actual terms, differentiation and specialization. And then we're going to go into specifics about where you can see it in animals and plants, okay? All right, so let's start off by reading here. Single cellular organisms need to be able to carry out all functions of an organism in one place. Makes sense. If you think about a bacteria, it's a single cell organism. So all of the functions need to be carried out inside the bacteria cell. But multicellular organisms do not, therefore allowing cells to gain specific structures and functions. So let me give you just the example that we're going to be hitting over and over again, and that is humans, okay? So humans are considered multicellular organisms because we have lots of different types of cells. Okay, so you have muscle cells, you have nerve cells, you have blood cells. All these different types of cells have a different job in your body. All right, and so there's tons of advantages for having these special cells in your body. Okay, so that's the first part that you're gonna underline there, or sorry, highlight, and that's because this is the process, right? So the process of allowing cells to gain specific structures and functions is called differentiation. All right, so say that a couple times, differentiation. And like I said, specialization and differentiation are pretty much the same thing. So let's continue on here. The cell changes and develops sometimes, even gains different subcellular components. All right. In animals, this differentiation occurs at the embryonic stage with totipotent stem cells. And it says in brackets there, we will learn more about this in future lessons. So that term there, totipotent, I'm not going to have you underline it or highlight it right now because we're going to visit that in lesson 6 when we actually go into depth about stem cells. All right. But so far, as long as you understand that differentiation is the process, okay, it's the actual change that happens when cells gain specific structures and functions. So, what do they become? These cells become specialized, all right, which means they are tasked for specific functions whilst still not fully formed, still not a fully formed organism. Okay, so highlight that, please. All right. So those cells, once they become a nerve cell or a blood cell or a muscle cell, they can't go back into becoming a stem cell. Okay? And that's kind of where totipotent comes from. Totipotent just basically means that they have the ability to become anything. Okay? So that's kind of where stem cells in humans come into play. And again, we're going to learn much more about that. But as long as you understand that in animals, okay, there is what's called an embryonic stage. And an embryo, as you know, is kind of the first steps, the first stage of forming a baby or a child or offspring, right? So in that embryo, while the child is developing, they're going to have a bunch of these stem cells that are replicating and duplicating. And while they're duplicating, some of those cells are going to become specialized, or they're going to become, or going to go through differentiation to become nerve cells, brain cells, blood cells, all these different types of cells while they're developing. And even after you're born, you continue to grow and you're still developing. And so you're still forming these new types of cells. Okay? So that's in humans for you. Let's continue on at the end of line 13. Plant cells retain the ability to revert back and can therefore always change the type of cell they are. So that sounds like a pretty important piece of information there. So let's highlight that. And I just chose green for a different color because we're talking about plants here. So plants are actually are very special in that way because they store their stem cells at the very tips of the plants, called the meristem. And this is the reason why plants grow. They grow taller and they grow out. And it's because they have stem cells at the end of it that are specialized as they keep growing. Okay? But that being said, they still do have the ability to go back and forth. Okay? So there are some cells that will differentiate in adult form of an organism, but it's mostly for repair or replacement purposes. So the big difference there is that when you're an adult, so speaking of myself, for example, I don't have stem cells, right? I have different types of cells that will only change, okay, they will only differentiate into new skin cells or blood cells. And these are found mostly in the the bone marrow. So if I have a cut or if I, skin myself, whatever, then new cells will come to repair it. And those are adult stem cells, I guess you could call it. Okay? All right. Right. So let's start off at line 18 there, okay? When cells have differentiated, they become specialized. So remember how I told you that differentiation and specialization essentially mean the same thing, all right? they carry out one specific function. So look at the diagram on the screen here, and starting at the very top, you have muscle cells, fat cells, bone cells, blood cells, nervous cells, which are part of your nervous system. So I would call it a nerve cell. Epithelial cell is actually your skin, right? So skin cells, immune cells such as your white blood cells, and sex cells. So males, that would be your sperm, females, that would be your egg, right? So just make sure you have that first line highlighted there. And the next sentence is actually quite important. It says the cell may have adapted the cell may have adapted its shape to support the function. So adapted, also you might have heard it as adaptation, things like that, is actually a really important part about stem cells. Okay. So I just want to make sure that you have this annotation in your booklet somewhere, and I want you to write down that adapt means to change in response to the surroundings. So, for example, there's tons of these. If you have a cactus generally lives in the desert, but that doesn't mean that a cactus doesn't have any predators, right? There are still animals out there that feed on cacti. So, in order to defend itself, a cactus has adapted or has changed in response to those predators. And the change is to have needles, right? So that's one way that it keeps animals from eating the cacti. All right. So and like I said, there's a bunch more adaptations that are short term, long term, such as rabbits will change their fur in the wintertime in North America from brown to white in order to camouflage better from predators. So these are adaptations that will help allow it to either perform better or to survive better. All right. There are three specific cells that we're going to look at. In animals, we're going to look at sperm, muscle, and nerve cells. And then in plant cells, we're going to look at root hair cells, phloem cells, and xylem cells. Okay. So before I move on, okay, because like I said, I'm going to talk about differentiation, we're going to talk about specialization, and then we're going to look into the specific cells. I just want you to make sure that you have these specific definitions down, okay? Cell differentiation is the process of a cell becoming specialized, all right? So it's the actual procedure that it goes through from a stem cell to become a nerve cell, all right? Whereas cell specialization is the difference between cells. So when you're comparing a nerve cell and a blood cell, both of them have very different jobs and they look very different, right? And they both have very different adaptations. All right. So when it becomes specialized, then you have that cell has a specific job now. Okay. All right. So here are the three types of cells we're going to look at in animals, right? So sperm, nerve cells, and muscle cells. So let's go through them in order here. Lines 22 and 23 say sperm are adapted to enable delivery of genetic material to an egg cell in the oviduct. Its head is streamlined and the tail has mitochondria to provide energy. All right. So, I mean, it makes sense here. Sperm cells have genetic material. Egg cells have genetic material, both from dad and mom. And when they meet, then they will basically combine their genetic material and produce a zygote, right? And it will form into an embryo. So these little things, such as like sperm cells have lots of mitochondria, is actually an adaptation. It just didn't happen one day, but actually over years and years and years, they will actually adapt to the fact that sperm cells, if they don't have enough mitochondria, then they can't propel themselves forward, right? So in order to survive, the ones that actually make it through are the ones that have lots of mitochondria. Okay, and then over time, every sperm cell will have lots of mitochondria in order to have that energy to move the tail. Same thing goes for the egg cells. It says that egg cells hold lots of nutrients needed. Same thing. If it doesn't have enough nutrients, then it probably won't survive, which means that the only ones that do make it through are the ones that have enough nutrients. So over generations and generations of reproduction, eventually you're going to get all egg cells have enough nutrients to start a new organism. All right, so these are adaptations that most organisms have in order to survive. So yeah. All right, nerve cells. So nerve cells, you may or may not know quite a bit about, but I find them really fascinating. So nerve cells are specialized to increase speed of electrical signal transfer. They are long in shape so that there's more distance covered by one cell. So I'm going to show you an image of a typical nerve cell, and it looks something like this. Right now, you don't need to know all the different parts of this, but the part I want to focus your attention on is the yellow beads in the middle there, and you'll notice that they're wrapped in this yellow thing called myelin. So myelin is actually this really cool thing where your nerves send impulses from your brain to your body parts, and then it sends it back to your brain saying, job completed. If we didn't have myelin, our reaction time would be multiple times slower than what we're used to right now. So you might think of your reaction time to be really quick if you play sports or whatever. You might think, oh, I have a reaction time of like a second or half a second, and that's fair. But for those that don't have myelin, you might expect them to have reaction times of 1 to 2 seconds, which to you seems extremely slow. And as you're developing, you'll notice that, toddlers, kids who are aged 1 to 4, have really slow reflexes. You'll do something and it takes them a second or two to respond to that. And that's because their nerve cells aren't fully developed yet. But if you look at, an 18, 19, 20-year-old, they have much faster reflexes, right? And that's because their nerve cells have fully developed, right? And they're all covered in this thing called myelin. All right, so that's a really cool adaptation that I learned about when I was taking science. All right, and the last one we're going to look at is muscle cells. So muscle cells are specialized to allow efficient contraction, right? So if you've ever worked out before, you'll notice that your muscles tend to get really hard when you're flexing them. Okay, and what it's doing is it's contracting. So when you're trying to pull something up, your muscles contract in order to pull something. So what do they need in order to do that contraction? They need lots of mitochondria. Okay, so here's the last one. There's your typical muscle cell. No, it does not have arms, it does not have a face, but they are long and kind of wavy like that. So muscle cells are long so that they can contract, so they're more efficient in that pulling motion. And they also contain lots of mitochondria so that they can have that energy, right, to do whatever they need to do. All right, so looking at plant cells now. So the three that we're looking at are root hair, phloem cells, and xylem. Okay, now this is going to get a little bit confusing because you probably have not heard these terms. If you have, it may have been a while since you've heard them, but I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that you understand as much as you can, okay? So let's start off with an easy one. The root hair cells you find at the bottom of a plant that's typically underground. So root hairs are responsible for absorbing the water and the minerals from the soil. And not all root hairs are efficient, right? There are some roots that are very thick and long. There are some roots that are very short, but you have millions of them. So what do they need, right? The answer to that is they need a very large surface area. So that's actually a really important part, large surface area. The other part that helps that is to have a very thin cell membrane. And when you have a thin cell membrane, what happens is things like water and minerals can get into the root hairs much easier, as opposed to if you had a very thick one. Okay. Next one is your phloem. Okay. So phloem and xylem actually go hand in hand because they both have a similar job, but they are both specialized in different ways. Phloem cells are long tubes with fewer subcellular structures. So there's your first adaptation, is it doesn't have a lot of organelles. And this allows the flow of dissolved sugars to be transported up and down the plants. And something that's much, much higher level is that phloem cells actually have the actual structure of the phloem have different types of cells inside them as well. And that is that one of the types of cells helps provide energy for that transport. So as things with everything, you need energy to move things around. So they have these companion cells that help provide energy. And those companion cells are basically filled with chloroplasts. that provide energy for the plant. The other type of cell are ones that basically connect everything together. So if you look at the picture, you'll notice that there's little levels to the phloem cells. So every time it's divided, that type of cell is what connects each phloem cell together so that you have a seamless transport up and down the plant. Okay. And that moves to the last one, which is xylem tubes. So xylem tubes are actually just the dead cells in a plant, but they are adapted to become hollow. And when they're hollow, it allows the water and the minerals to flow up and down the root. Okay, and there's a specific reason why this works is because water has a very specific quality that allows it to go up and down, and that is water cohesion. Okay, so the only reason why this works is because water has that ability to stick to the sides and such, right? So for instance, if you fill a glass of water, you'll notice that on the top of the surface of the water, the edge of the cup, you'll notice that the water kind of slightly goes upwards at the edge of the cup. All right, and that's because of water, not because of the glass. All right, so the same reason why that occurs is the same reason why water can move up and down in the xylem. Okay. And then one last one that I wanted to add in there about the xylem adaptation is that they're strengthened by a substance called lignin. Okay, if you don't know what lignin is, it's just kind of the same thing as cellulose. It's a structure, or it's a substance that strengthens the cell. Same kind of function there. Right. So now we're moving on to the last bit of the lesson here, and if you ever see a link for a YouTube video, please take the time to watch them because they could probably explain this with better animations and such. They have the tools to do that, whereas I don't. So please take the time to watch those videos because they are quite informational and it might help to have a visual aid sometimes. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to basically define the words on the left here. So tell me what cell specialization is, tell me what cell differentiation is, what is a stem cell, what's the function of a stem cell, and what is DNA. Okay, so pause the video really quickly and I'll let you do that. Perfect. So let's go through these. Most of them we've already talked about very explicitly in this lesson. Things like DNA we've talked about in previous lessons, but again, it's really important to know this. So first one, cell specialization. So this one, and if you don't have the exact same words as mine, don't worry, as long as you have the same ideas and some keywords that I'm looking for, okay? So cell specialization is having separate roles or jobs for each type of cell in a multicellular organism. So red blood cells have a specific role. Nerve cells have a specific role, okay? Cell differentiation. So again, this is the reason why you need to know the difference between these two words, okay? The process by which non-specialized cells turn into a specific type of cell. So remember that differentiation is the process of changing from a non-specialized cell, right, typically a stem cell, into a more specialized cell like red blood cells or skin cells, things like that. So I kind of answered the next one, which is what is a stem cell, and that is exactly what it is. It's an unspecialized cell or a non-specialized cell. And the function of that stem cell is to have the ability to differentiate into any type of cell. Okay. All right, last one is DNA, which stands for, bonus points, deoxyribonucleic acid. And DNA is the molecule that controls the way the cell functions. Okay, so I have had lots of people tell me that the DNA is like the brain. I like to think of DNA as the recipe where the cell is the chef and the chef has to follow the recipe. Okay, so it follows the recipe, which is the DNA, and the DNA holds all the information about what that cell needs to do. Okay, so it is kind of the way that it controls how the cell functions. All right. So again, if you don't have it exactly like this, don't worry. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is as long as you have the correct ideas. All right. But if you feel more comfortable copying this down, go ahead and do that. All right. Last thing before we get on to the knowledge check, and that is an exam style question. Explain how a human a human skin cell differs to a human nerve cell. All right. So this is worth 4 marks, which means that I should see at least 4 distinct points. And sometimes you might use the same point, but it's explained differently. So don't worry about that and take the time now. All right, think it through, and you can pause the video right now. Right. So again, if you don't have it exactly like mine, don't worry, as long as you have the right terms. Okay. So what I wrote was a human skin cell is called an epithelial cell. Its job is to make sure that all the contents of the body, such as the blood, organs, bones, all stay inside the body. A nerve cell is responsible for sending and receiving signals to different parts of the body to your brain. This way you can respond to your surroundings. All right. So this is a very basic answer. If you wanted to add more stuff such as nerve cells, you can talk about what I mentioned before about myelin. You can talk about an adaptation about nerve cells, how they've become long, and they're adapted to speed up signals sent from your brain to your body. That completely works as well. With the skin cells, you can talk about how human skin cells are able to repair themselves through adult stem cells, things like that. So look back at the booklet of the lesson, right? And see if you can pick out any more things that you talk about human skin cells, all right? But other than this is probably the most I can expect out of everyone. All right, so that's the end of the lesson. If you want to take the time now to pause the video again and make sure that you get through the 8 questions, and then you'll notice that there is questions 9, 10, 11. But I'm going to explain that in the next slide here because these 8 questions, I typically like to give out 8 questions for a knowledge check, and then 9, 10, and 11 I'm going to explain differently. All right, so number 1, identify when cell differentiation occurs in animals. So this one is when they become, before they become full adults or when they're in the embryo. Either one will work. The key word here is development. All right, so when animals are developing, their cells are always changing. Number 2, state where differentiation occurs in animal cells. So this one, you can be very specific. You can say that differentiation occurs in the embryo, but really they occur in every cell. But I will accept embryo as your answer. Number 3, state the difference between differentiation and specialization. So this might be a kind of a long answer, but I wrote differentiation is the process of non-specialized cells turning into specialized cells, and specialization is having those separate jobs for each type of cell in a multicellular organism, right? So try to hit that home where differentiation is the process, okay? And specialization is where you have different jobs for different types of cells. All right, number 4 and 5 are similar. Identify 2 adaptations of a nerve cell and a root hair cell. So for the nerve cell, you can write that they have a very long fiber, so they're basically constructed very long, so that they can carry messages up and down over long distances, right? And also they cover more ground. And nerve cells are wrapped in something called myelin, wrapped in a myelin sheath to increase the speed of nerve impulses, or you can say electrical impulses as well. Number 5, identify 2 adaptations of a root hair cell. One is that they have a very large surface area to collect as much water and nutrients as possible, and 2 is they have lots of mitochondria which release energy from glucose during respiration. Number 6, what is a multicellular organism? So very straightforward. It's an organism that has many different types of cells. So humans are considered multicellular organisms, which means that we have different types of cells all over our body. Number 7, what is a prokaryote? Okay, or what does a prokaryote mean? It is a unicellular organism that lacks a membrane-bound nucleus. All right, straight from the booklet. And number 8, give an example of a prokaryote. This one, bacteria. And if you want to get even more specific, you can give me the name of a bacteria, which I put E. coli as a bacteria. Okay, so make sure that you have all the answers there. And we get to the last slide here. And I know it's a lot of information, which is the reason why I had you answer the first 8 questions first, and then 9, 10, and 11 were a little bit more advanced questions. So number 9 just talks about everything about differentiation, right? And this is nothing new. This is all what we've talked about today. And it asks what cells differentiate, where does it occur, when does it occur, how does it occur. So I kind of went into detail about that. Stem cells can differentiate into specialized cells, and these cells are found in embryos when the organism is developing. Okay, and how does it occur? You haven't learned this yet, but there's something called gene expression. All right, so the DNA or the genes inside a cell, like I said, contains the recipe, contains the instructions for how that cell is going to become specialized. So stem cells are kind of like a blank slate, and somewhere along the way, it's given a recipe or a set of instructions that says become a muscle cell or become a blood cell. And then that cell starts to follow the recipe, follow the instructions. And it will either make the appropriate organelles or it will get rid of certain organelles. So, for instance, a blood cell actually contains no nucleus, which seems kind of weird because you think every cell needs a nucleus, but not blood cells. So, in order for a blood cell to become a blood cell, it has to lose its nucleus. All right? So there you go. Number 10, using the answers to the questions above, write a paragraph explaining the main points of today's lesson. So obviously your answer can differ a lot from this, but I just wrote that specialized means to be tasked with a specific job. Differentiation is the actual process of changing into a specialized cell. Stem cells are found in animals that can be differentiated into any type of cell. And obviously you can go much more into detail about the plant cells, the types of cells found in humans, some adaptations. You know, a paragraph is not enough to explain all the main points. Okay, and then the last one asks you state how the structures of the following cells and their functions. That doesn't really make sense. So what I did was I wrote what is the function of the cells and how did they what is the adaptation that they have. So, red blood cells are responsible for carrying nutrients around your body as well as oxygen. So, most students know that red blood cells carry oxygen. What they don't know is that they carry other things as well. And one adaptation of a red blood cell is that they have no nucleus, like I mentioned before. And what this does is allows the cell to carry a lot more because the nucleus actually takes up quite a bit of space. So, getting rid of it means that it can carry a lot more stuff. Next one. Nerve cells are responsible for sending signals to different parts of your body. And an adaptation they have is that they're very long cells, so they can cover a lot more space. Or you can put that they have a covering called myelin to speed up signals. C is root hair cells. Very straightforward. Roots are responsible for absorbing water and nutrients. And they have a very large surface area and a thin cell membrane to maximize the efficiency of absorbing all that stuff. And then the last one is xylem. And xylem is the tissue which transports water and minerals from the roots up to the leaves. And these you can find on the BBC Bite Size website. And basically they lose their end walls so that they can connect to the next xylem cell. So if you have cells all lined up in a row, right? For a xylem to actually transport water from one cell to the next, the cell walls could still be there, but it loses its efficiency because it has to travel through the wall. So what they do is they get rid of the walls in between each cell so that they have a clear path all the way through. Imagine if you're living in a house and your house is attached down a line of street, right? And you build a wall, or sorry, you create a hole basically through every person's house, right? Instead of going into every person's house, you can just travel through each house. I know it's a terrible analogy, but it's kind of what I think of when I say they lose their end walls, right? Okay, so there you go. Just make sure you have something along these lines here. And as always, make sure you ask your teachers questions if I don't answer them in this video right here, okay? Other than that, that's everything, and thank you for watching again.